On episode 11 of this podcast last year, we had Ryan Duarte, lead singer of Post Paradise, on the show. I do not know why I didn't feature their music on that episode. You live and learn. But I love their music, and check them out on Spotify and iTunes if you do too. Here's a sample of Post Paradise from the track called Digging Secrets.
That's on your tongue. It reminds you of where you have been, even though you just begun. Now you're here, and you just don't care what you'll uncover.
Welcome, everyone, to the NoCo, Northern Colorado's podcast, bringing curiosity and community connection one conversation at a time. I am your host, Ivan Wayne. Who do we have today? How often do you apologize to yourself about who you are? Carrie Chuckles, our guest today, thinks that we should be vulnerable, express ourselves, and most importantly, she thinks that we should laugh more. We must try harder to enjoy our time and be ourselves in our own skin. I wasn't exactly sure what we'd get into on this episode, but we had fun, and I think you'll enjoy our conversation. Our Instagram features photos of Carrie's studio where we recorded, so go check them out. Are you ready, listener? Let's get to it. Hello, listeners, and welcome. I sit here in the fabulous studio of Carrie Chuckles, and I'm excited to post this space on Instagram and Facebook because, my goodness, what a little place you have here. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
And how did you come to craft this space that you work in?
It's kind of a collection. As an artist, you kind of collect things and think, oh, I'll use this for a project. And then you don't. And you soon find yourself surrounded by all these things that you loved at one time and you still love and you can't part with. So they kind of surround you and become part of your inspiration.
And what has been inspiring you lately?
I'm kind of a fan of, I call it rusty candy. So anything like metal and rusty, and I should probably get my tetanus shot. That'd probably be a wise idea if I'm in love with rusty metal.
Or are you picking up random metal scraps around
Yeah,
town?
in fact, I've got a pair of old rusty wire cutters up there that my buddy found on his farm, and they're hanging on my wall like a horseshoe. So they're rusted open, and he's like, I got a good piece of rusty candy for you. And I was like, yeah. Let's hang it. Let's put it on the wall.
So are you doing anything with them after you obtain them, or you think just the item itself because it's like hearkening back to a previous, where has this come in for you?
So I used to, back in the day, there was a competition in Loveland called Sculpture Games where Uncle Benny's would give you a bunch of... Have you been to Uncle Benny's building supplies?
I'm not familiar, no.
It's a lot of building supplies, a lot of random, and he would donate a big pile of, I'll say, quote-unquote junk, and artists would have to go in and try and create a sculpture out of everything that was just supplied in that pile. So that was a really fun event, and I competed in it several times and got a couple of awards. People's Choice is usually my award to win because I have a good following. But yeah.
Oh, so you're popular.
Yeah, so, and talented, maybe. Okay. Maybe more popular than talented. But yeah, so that's kind of where my love for Rusty came from. So
Rusty candy.
rusty
That's
candy.
a brand new term. I'm learning here.
Yeah. Skeleton keys. I've got one around my neck right now. Yeah, little metal boxes. I go antiquing once a week, just looking. And
Right.
if something comes home with me, it's usually metal and rusty.
And where does your time as an artist start? How'd you get into this realm?
So I've always been an artist. Remember as a kid, and I actually have the shirt over there. You had your little art shirt as a kid that you put over your clothes for art class, and I remember every time I made a pretty color, I'd paint it on my shirt to kind of take it home. And my mom recently found it in a bunch of stuff, and I have to laugh because the front of it says Italian Power, and on the back in like fuzzy iron-on letters it says Little Whopper, which I don't think is appropriate now as a first or second grader in art school to wear. Always been an artist, and once I got here in Loveland, I moved here in 2002, and about 2006 I started to grow my roots in the art community, and was at first a two-dimensional artist working in acrylic and mixed media. I'm also kind of a paper junkie too, so
What do you mean, paper junkie?
I like paper a lot. Old paper, any like old memo pads, any old graph paper. When my grandmother passed away and they were going through the house, my grandma loved stationery, and everyone was like fighting over the antiques and everything. And I was like, wait, what about grandma's paper? And I actually have a piece in the hallway that was made out of a stack of those paper doilies.
What are paper doilies?
Like paper doilies, like the little round things that you would put on like underneath like fancy cookies and stuff at a party, like those kind of things. So it was like this big stack of paper doilies that I turned into a couple
You mean like
of pieces
paper
of art.
plates?
No, like lacy,
Oh.
like the lacy paper.
See, I'm from Oklahoma. We'd call that paper plate.
No, they wouldn't.
Right. No, I don't think anyone where I'm from knows what a doily is.
No, like they're like a lacy piece of paper that it's like a napkin, if like a fancy napkin you would put between the plate and whatever you're serving.
Yeah.
You should Google it.
Papers and napkins usually sit to the side for me.
Guess
That's
what? I'll show you on your way out,
Okay.
and you'll go, oh, now I know what you're talking about. But yeah, so paper, and anyway, I started working in 3D. Once I started getting involved because we used to have the show called Love and Light at the Feed and Grain, and that was more art installations, which is kind of difficult because it's not really art that somebody can buy. It's more of like you experience it. So I started working in that 3D medium, and then later it turned into snow sculpture and ice carving, and then junk, rusty candy. Assemblage, we'll call it.
Yeah. How did you get into ice carving and snow sculpture? I feel like every time I see those, I just think, where do you even start
It's
with
a lot
this?
of work, and then it goes away. Luckily for me, I was able to find this really lovely group of artists here in Loveland, and artists are kind of funny because we're either super competitive or you just have this really good sense of community. And I met this man named Jade Wendell, and he was like my art brother, like just immediately just knew like he was going to be my buddy. And he's a stone sculptor. He works in marble, and he invited me along and for snow sculpture, and that's just kind of how I got involved. So you get this group of people where I get you involved in art events that you normally wouldn't be involved in, and I did that for him and he did that for me, and I just kind of followed the path that art was.
Right. And I saw, as I was looking up things about you, that you have been a TEDx speaker. There was a TEDx Front Range event.
Yes, that was a few years ago, and I was told I was the funniest person on Facebook. So I do appreciate my sense of humor. It's gotten me through a lot. But so they kind of encouraged me to apply, and I did, and I got in, and it was, I fell through like every crack and had not a very good experience. However, I was able to push myself and go through with it. And I was going through a lot of personal issues, a lot of health issues at the time. So I was really proud of myself for going through with that. And afterwards, they had asked me to be then a speaker coach because I had like the worst experience. So I probably had the best advice. And that's kind of how that all started. But I'm pretty proud of myself for doing my TEDx speech. It's not fantastic. I think I have like 200 views on the interweb, so clearly I'm changing lives at an incredible rate.
All it takes is one, right?
Right.
But that's the thing about online media is even of listeners of this show, they could love it. They could absolutely they can't wait for the next episode of the More You NoCo to come out, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless they reach out and tell me. A lot of this is just like making a paper airplane and just throwing it outside and just hoping it lands somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, that, like with TEDx, I was like completely nervous, and kind of my dog, Charlie Chuckles, my last name for my art handle, he had died in my arms 3 days before TEDx, and I was also on like steroids, I was on steroid infusions, I was on low dose chemo, I was like on all of this, I was just a medical hot mess, and then for like my buddy to like die in my arms 3 days before, and I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to go onto the stage? I talk about him briefly, I think I talk about dog shit, but like I'll have to revisit it to fully appreciate the vulnerability and awkwardness that I was on stage. And I know that I did get the only standing ovation, but I think people just felt sorry for me.
Or maybe that's
like, awkward girl.
Maybe that's just how you feel.
Maybe
people connected with that because they see themselves in someone who isn't. Because typically when you watch a TED Talk, you just think, this person is a robot. Like, they are so poised. They have, like, the perfect voice.
Right.
Everything is perfectly timed.
Right.
Wow, that was a crisp 15 minutes.
Right.
And then maybe people saw your talk and they just kind of thought, like, this person is like me.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about being vulnerable. I do this thing on Facebook. It kind of started off as, like, a online diary where I call it Night Owl Confessions. I am nocturnal. I work in my studio at night as long as the ghosts will let me. About 11:30 is about the time they kick me out. But I go home, and that's kind of my time to like self-reflect. So maybe during the day on my Facebook and my Instagram, it's all like fart jokes and, funny observations through the day. But at night, I really kind of try and do some self-reflection. And I started to write these Night Owl Confessions, and people really enjoy reading them. And so I just continue to put them out there because I think it's nice to show that your life isn't super perfect. And I really I'm pretty honest about everything. So I think if people can connect with that and just know that, like, I've had people reach out, go, oh, I'm glad you wrote that because, like, I feel that way too. And if people don't feel alone, I enjoy influencing people in a positive way.
Right. Helping and just sharing parts of yourself that you may not get to express as an artist. Right. This is a blog on your website, right? Yeah. Because I saw a couple of these posts.
Yeah. And so I get people that even come up to me and they're like, hey, I feel like I talk to you every day because of your Facebook feed or because of this. And I'm like, oh, well, I haven't like physically talked to you in over a year, but I'm glad you're following along. And kind of like what we were talking about with whether things land on the internet or not, I'll put my heart into something that I'm writing. And I'm not only a visual artist, but a writer as well. And if people, like, I'll be like, oh, this is like the best post ever. And I get like 10 likes. And you're like, oh. But not everyone feels comfortable in participating or even clicking like. So I can't get too caught up on how many people are actually physically hitting the like button. But I know that when I talk to people later on, I know that I'm still having an impact.
Well, also keep in mind that the way the Facebook newsfeed wall algorithm works now is completely different from 2009, where it's been tinkered with. It's not chronological anymore. It's not even based on people in your network. So I read somewhere recently that it's like 9 to 11% of your friends will only have an access to your posts unless they go to your profile in particular because of ads, local stuff, targeted stuff. They're trying to figure out how can we keep you here longer and engaged. So if you don't get the likes, and this is for anyone out there, if you don't get the likes on any social media platform you weren't looking for, don't worry, not as many people saw it as you think. Right.
Well, and I run a lot of social media pages for Loveland, and one of them is I Love Loveland, which is huge. It's a community board where it's just sharing everything that's going on in Loveland. And we have over 21,000 followers, which is pretty impressive. But even if we have a post that does really well, I mean, the engagement is like 6,000 And we're like, well, wait, we have 21,000. Why aren't? So yeah, we really look at liking, commenting, and sharing, and that's how you keep everything active. So I think it's just important for people to know.
You had mentioned your artist handle includes the last name Chuckles, which comes from Charlie, a dog of yours, who you said unfortunately passed away 3 days before your TED Talk.
Yes.
And so how did this animal become so influential that it became part of your identity and your name?
Well, he's my boy. Like, he was my boy. He's a German Shepherd Husky mix, and got him as a puppy from a puppy rescue. And he, at the time, I had my art studio at the house, and he was just kind of like my open sign. So wherever I was, he was in the doorway. And so every time I was in the studio, he was right there at the door, and he was just a constant companion and just a really gentle, special soul. He also told me when it was time to take a break by either like nudging my arm or like, you know, pushing in my keyboard. And yeah, he was kind of a character, and he was very impatient when he wanted a treat, but he was just really
aren't we all?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was incredible. He was just like my buddy. So you have certain spirits in your life that really kind of connect with you, and he was one of them. And I have another one here at this studio. His name's Ghost Cat. And
okay. I was going to say, speaking of spirits, you've mentioned multiple times since my arrival that this art studio you're currently in happens to be haunted.
It is haunted. My favorite little ghost is Ghost Cat, literal Ghost Cat. He's like meowed at me when I'm in the bathroom, like outside of the door. There's no cats here. There's no one here. You go to the bathroom and he's at the door meowing. He'll jump out of like the side view. I could describe him very well. I had him one night. I was working and I looked over and he was on my purple chair. So that's why I've got that little painting up there of Ghost Cat. And usually when I'm fiddling around with new mediums, I usually do a Ghost Cat to start off with. It's just kind of a nice little image, and kind of that little guy's he's inspired me. And actually before this particular room was my studio, it used to belong to my friend Jules, and I actually got a stick and poke tattoo of Ghost Cat on the inside of my
look at that
finger.
Very cool.
As a little reminder, yeah. And Ghost Cat's on my car. He's just, he's around. He's come home with me. It's kind of weird.
That's neat. And you said, this place is haunted, but unfortunately you may not be in this space for much longer. You actually looking to move studios due to some complex situations?
Yeah, looking for a new studio space. I can always go back home, but it's kind of nice just to find another creative environment. And this particular place being haunted has definitely added a spirit to my artwork that I have enjoyed. So, like I said, though, there's been nights where it's around 11:30. I've had stuff move. I've had stuff fall. You hear things, and it's quite surprising to you. We used to call it being licked. So we're like, did you get licked by the ghost? Because, I mean...
That's interesting.
It doesn't...
Phrasing.
It doesn't scare... Yeah, it doesn't... Like, it scares the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. It didn't do anything to you. And then afterwards, you're like, did that just really happen? Like, there was one where I had done a show downstairs. I hung a single artist show, and it was all of his artwork. And he and I were the last ones in the gallery. We left. And then I had to return back the next morning because I forgot something. And when I show up, there's a piece of artwork that was by the namesake of this place who had passed away. And it was like in the middle of the gallery. So I hung the show. It was only this person's artwork. And come back to find a new piece of artwork just kind of randomly placed in the middle. They're around. They're
Interesting.
Around. Yeah.
So more people than just yourself have experienced these spirits in this studio.
Yeah, exactly. I used to have a friend that would come, and he was a nocturnal creator. I was a nocturnal creator. So we'd kind of sit together and work. And it wasn't until I started having experiences here where I'm the only one here, and I would hear the bell downstairs ring, and it's just those metal balls on the door. And you just hear the ball inside, it's like the hollow ring. And just enough to spook you. So I invited my nocturnal creator to come and parallel create with me. And there was one night we had heard something in this middle studio, hollow, and it fell and it bounced. And I had been inside of the studio several times during the night. It was it's kind of like the hot box of upstairs because it's got 2 heater registers. So I was trying to get paint to dry quickly. So I was in and out, in and out, in and out. And we heard the sound, and he's very logical, and I'm very like, oh, what was that? It's very Scooby-Doo. So we had gone in, and there was a little hollow, there was a tube of paint that was like halfway full, and it was laying in the middle of the room, and I had been in and out the entire time, and we like picked it up and dropped it, and sure enough, that was the sound, but it came from a shelf that was in like a tray. It was in a tray on a shelf on an interior wall, so there's no wind, there's no rhyme or reason for this little thing to happen. So yeah, I've had sugar skulls that I've made fall off of ledges that have sat there for months, but I think it's ghost cat because they like to knock things off of flat surfaces. So
do you think it's all the cat?
I don't think it's all the cat. No, I don't think it's all the cat. But we have had mediums come here, and they all pretty much point to the same areas in the house of like, whoa, there's a lot of activity over there.
Interesting.
And, yeah, they've been able to also kind of pick out certain spirits and certain cats. So
I'm not placing
cats.
Right. I'm not placing my belief or non-belief on your stories. I'm not offering an opinion, but just asking if they're knocking random items in the art studio or placing things down on the ground. Why do you think that is? Like, if these were spirits of people past, why are they messing around with your all's studio?
I don't know. I think we're a little bit more open, but also there's a bottle tree. Well, you're from Oklahoma. Are you familiar with bottle trees?
No, this is another thing I'm ignorant about.
Okay. Well, so bottle trees are kind of like a thing in the South, and it's kind of a metal tree with little posts, and people put bottles on there. And the hopes of bottle trees are they're placed outside, so the spirits are attracted to the bottles, and they get kind of locked inside of the bottle, if that makes sense, like a mouse trap for ghosts.
Right.
Okay. And we have one downstairs, so I'm wondering if that's kind of a draw too.
Interesting.
Yeah. So not a lot of bottle trees inside, but we've got one, so I kind of blame that.
Right. So hopping back over to your TED Talk, I really liked 2 of the points that you took. So I watched the full thing.
Oh my God.
I did not think it was
How
bad.
awkward.
I did not think it was bad. But
okay.
You had 2 main points that I kind of took from it. And one was the value of humor, which you've kind of mentioned.
Yes.
And how that works for people. And also just how valuable it is to be vulnerable to other people so that they can feel courageous enough to be vulnerable themselves.
Yes.
Do you feel like, and you told some stories, that these ideas kind of originate all the way back in your childhood.
Yeah. I feel that humor is definitely important. It's gotten me through a lot of difficult times, as skewed and dark humor can be. It's a good coping skill and defense mechanism. So, I'm kind of the person, I won't say I'm kind of the person, I am the person that people come to when they're having a difficult time. I go to people's doctor's appointments with them just to kind of keep them occupied if they're anticipating bad news. My favorite story about just using humor for good. My sister was having some issues and thinking that she had Meniere's, which is where you have vertigo really bad. And she was going in for a test, and they said, if this test works and you have it, you're going to be extremely sick. And so I had gone with her to this doctor's appointment, and sure enough, she got super sick, super, super nauseous. The vertigo was bad. So I was there with her, and we come out of the doctor's, and we make it to the waiting room, and she can only go like 2 steps. So we sit down, and then she's like, okay, we can do this. We get back up, and we go like 2 more steps and she can't go any farther. So we kind of like slowly get our way outside of the doctor's office and we start making our way down the hallway and we sit down and she's like, I can't go any farther. And I was like, the door's right there. She goes, I can't. So we sat down in front of the elevator. And so, you know, she's obviously not feeling very well, but for every time the elevator opened and people were getting off, like I would try and have something funny, like, hey, we've been waiting for you. Where have you been? Just surprising people. And yeah, her and I giggled quite a bit about that until she was well enough to get outside of the building. So
yeah. So I actually study humor in the psych department at UNC.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Which Carrie did not know this in advance, but
I did not.
I really enjoyed the point. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think I really agree with your point about the positivity and just how humor gets us through tough times, which is really interesting because when you look back in the psych research that people did on humor and the theories around humor, up until just a couple decades ago, the majority of thought around humor was that it was always in spite of another person. So if you look at Freud and a lot of his predecessors, they all kind of analyze humor from a negative standpoint, that no humor exists without the downtrodden nature of an experience or like getting one over on another person.
Right.
You just read that and you think, really? Like for the thousands of years in civilization, there was never like a kind-hearted joke?
Right.
And I just feel like that there's no way that's the case. And it has always made me curious as a humor researcher, why it took so long for people to formally come up with positive theories and sides of humor.
Right. No, I also am not as fancy as you are.
I'm not fancy.
A student of humor.
Yeah. I came from Oklahoma.
a student of humor. Yeah, growing up, I always read the comics. I always enjoyed just that fun spin on everything. I had a very fun and loving dad who had a really great sense of humor, and that was really important to us growing up. And my artwork has got a comic feel to it, very illustrative, but very fun. And I always try and come up with a fun and witty title to go along with a lot of them. The bottom, the little guy down there, that one's Cousin Yeti, which is kind of a Bumble / Cousin Eddie juxtaposition of from Christmas Vacation, but.
And that piece is in a California art studio and it's being moved right now or something?
No, that one got accepted into the Tiny Monster National Show, and I had another one there that one sold. So yeah, I'm kind of on this Tiny Monster kick right now.
Cousin Yeti.
I
love it. That's so cool.
Yeah. So
and you have Scooby-Doo eating Elf on the Shelf?
That's my dog. That's my current dog now. His name is Otis. Otis Humperdinck, because he has to hump his freaking bed every night in front of the TV while I'm trying to go to bed. But yeah, he looks like Scooby-Doo.
He does.
He's not going to be part of my Carrie Chuckles art handle, though. He's not that kind of dog. But yeah, humor is really important to me, and people don't understand how difficult it is. I mean, it's a science. It really is a science. You gotta wait for pauses. You gotta know your material. You gotta know your audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like analyzing stand-up comedy. At first, it just seems like, oh, they're talking, I can do that. But then when you think of how you would structure an hour of making people laugh consistently, it becomes like such a science and an art form. And just you begin to be very impressed when you watch other people's stand-up or just... And like hanging out with friends, I've always thought it's interesting when people will say something... And you think, and everyone laughs, like it's hilarious. You think about it afterwards, and you're like, it's so simple, but it's just that person's personality or the way they said it is just, it makes it so enjoyable in the moment.
I currently have a fun little part-time job, and I work with a lot of wonderful people who have been my friends. And when I walk into a room and I know, and I can kind of feel people's vibes. If it's heavy, if it's sad. Like I'm the clown, I want to go lift their spirits. And yesterday was probably one of my favorite examples where it was just kind of heavy air and people were going through some things. And I went up to them like, hey, I'm following this new page on Instagram. And they're like, what? I'm like, it's called Genderless Nipples. And they're like, what? And so we went through, and one of my friends is like 8 months pregnant. So she's got the big like jolly belly, and she's got cell phone that does the self recognition.
The face recognition?
Yeah, the face recognition. And she was laughing so hard, her phone wouldn't even recognize her face. So I was like, that's a win for me. If I can make people laugh that hard over something as dumb as genderless nipples, you're going to go to it, aren't you?
I'm very curious about what this means.
Yeah.
We got some listeners who are maybe pulling it up right now. If you're driving, please don't.
They've got they have very specific directions of how to photograph your nipple and post it or submit it. Apparently it's got to be like a Coke can away, which I didn't know, but that's...
And the point is to guess the gender.
I know some of them, there's one that like cracked my ass up. So you're just going through and you're like, nipple, nipple. Oh, that's a weird one. Nipple, nipple, nipple. And there's one that had like a cat sticker on it, which cats make everything funny, I feel. But if somebody's going to put a cat sticker on their nipple, like I was dying. I was laughing so hard.
I wonder if Bill Gates and the people who are early pioneers of the internet, what they would think if they knew that eventually this world-changing medium would be 40% cat videos.
Oh, I know.
That people post.
I know. Yeah, I'm gonna find this for you. Let's see. You're gonna love it. I hope so. I mean, you said you had a cat, right?
Yes.
And what's his name?
Her name is Coco. Okay, interesting.
So anyway,
I don't know off the top of my head which one that is.
Yeah. See, but you can't judge.
No. You
don't know if that's a male or female nipple. It's just got a cat sticker on it.
And there it is. Is that a good way to end this episode? So, Carrie, if people are interested in finding you out there, maybe reading your Confessions of a Night Owl blog or seeing upcoming events, where can we send them?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and Carrie Chuckles is my name, and there's a million ways to spell Carrie. So if you remember the Jell-O jingle of Jello, I just say it's Kerri. It's Jell-O, but with different letters.
Okay.
So yeah, Carrie Chuckles, and that's where you can find me currently.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. This was fun.
Thank you.
If you enjoy The More You Know Co., please check out our other episodes. We've had such a variety of interesting and awesome people, you never know what you're going to find. I've been in awe and wonder going on this journey around northern Colorado. Read the episode descriptions, take a shot, and discover our NoCo community. Trevor Fossey, always putting in the time to edit and mix these episodes. Thank you so much for your dedication and hard work. Russell Isaac Long, our guest on episode 67 of the show, makes all our music here at The More You Know Co. Thank you, good sir. We are on Facebook and Instagram if you're interested in staying connected with us, or just to see bonus visual content in addition to this very audio-driven podcast experience. We will be back soon with another conversation, exploring and connecting the people who make up Northern Colorado. Until next time, peace!